The sound of breaking glass echoed through the marble halls of the Montgomery mansion as 12-year-old twins. Ethan and Emma sent another expensive vase crashing to the floor. Their latest victim was Mrs. Henderson, a veteran teacher with 30 years of experience who was now gathering her scattered lesson plans with shaking hands. "I simply cannot continue," Mrs. Henderson declared to Richard Montgomery, the tech billionaire who stood watching from the doorway of his home office. "In all my years of teaching, I have never encountered children quite like yours." Richard ran his fingers through his graying hair, a gesture that had become increasingly common over the past 2 years. Since his wife Catherine's death in a car accident, the twins had become completely unmanageable. What started as normal grief had transformed into something much more destructive. "Mrs. Henderson, please reconsider," Richard pleaded, though he could see the determination in her eyes. "I'll double your salary. Triple it if necessary." The elderly teacher shook her head firmly. "Mr. Montgomery, this isn't about money. Yesterday, Ethan put superglue on my chair. Last week, Emma hacked into my computer and deleted all my teaching materials. They've turned education into a battlefield, and I refuse to be a casualty any longer." As Mrs. Henderson collected her belongings, Richard couldn't help but think about the parade of educators who had come and gone. There was Miss Parker, the young graduate who lasted only 3 days before the twins convinced her that the house was haunted by making mysterious noises through the air vents. Then came Mr. Rodriguez, the strict disciplinarian who quit after Emma programmed the smart home system to play embarrassing sounds every time he tried to speak. The twins had also defeated Mrs. Chun, who specialized in gifted children, and Mr. Johnson, who came highly recommended for handling difficult students. Each teacher had the same story. The Montgomery twins were too intelligent for their own good, using their considerable resources and technical knowledge to make learning impossible. They had access to every gadget imaginable, a fully equipped computer lab, and enough money to order whatever pranking supplies their creative minds could devise. "Perhaps you should consider boarding school," Mrs. Henderson suggested gently as she reached the front door. "Sometimes a change of environment can work wonders." Richard had considered this option many times, but he couldn't bring himself to send his children away. They were all he had left of Catherine, and despite their behavior, he loved them desperately. Catherine had always been the one who could handle the twins. She had a special way of connecting with them that Richard never quite understood after Mrs. Henderson's departure. Richard found the twins in their shared study room, which looked more like a technology store than a place of learning. Ethan was building something with advanced robotics kits while Emma was coding on her laptop, both acting as if nothing had happened. "We need to talk," Richard announced, trying to sound authoritative despite his exhaustion. "About what?" Emma asked without looking up from her screen. Her fingers danced across the keyboard with the skill of someone far older than 12. "About Mrs. Henderson leaving. About all the teachers leaving. This has to stop." Ethan finally looked up from his robot, his blue eyes showing a flash of defiance. "We didn't ask for any of them. We don't need teachers. We can learn everything online." "Education is more than just information," Richard explained, sitting down across from them. "It's about discipline, social skills, and learning to work with others. Something you both clearly need to work on." Emma snorted. "Social skills? Like the kids at regular school who would only want to be our friends because of our money? Or the teachers who pretend to care but only see dollar signs when they look at us?" Richard was struck by the cynicism in his daughter's voice. At 12 years old, she already viewed the world with the suspicion of someone much older. Ethan nodded in agreement with his twin, and Richard realized that their behavior wasn't just acting out, it was a defense mechanism. The twins had learned to push people away before those people could disappoint them. Every teacher who had left proved their point that adults couldn't be trusted to stay. Every failed relationship reinforced their belief that they were better off alone. "I'm going to find someone different," Richard promised. "Someone who won't give up on you." "Good luck with that," Ethan muttered, returning to his robotics project. "We give the next one a week, tops. That evening, Richard sat in his home office making phone calls to every educational agency in the city. The responses were all variations of the same theme. The Montgomery twins had developed a reputation that preceded them. Word had spread through the private education community that these particular children were career killers. "I'm sorry, Mr. Montgomery," said the director of the most prestigious tutoring agency in town. "While we appreciate your business, we simply cannot risk placing another of our instructors in that situation. The twins have already caused 3 of our best teachers to consider leaving the profession entirely." Richard poured himself a glass of whiskey and stared out at the city lights below. His penthouse offered a perfect view of downtown, but tonight the glittering skyline only reminded him of how isolated his family had become. Money could buy almost anything, but it couldn't buy genuine connection or healing for his grieving children. The next morning brought more bad news. Richard's assistant, Maria, knocked on his office door with a concerned expression. "Sir, there's been an incident at the house," she reported. The twins somehow managed to program the sprinkler system to activate whenever someone entered the study room. "The cleaning service is refusing to come back." Richard closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The twins were escalating their behavior, probably hoping to prevent him from hiring another teacher. Their technical skills were impressive but destructive. Emma had been coding since she was 8, and Ethan had a natural gift for engineering that would have made his mother proud under different circumstances. "Maria, I want you to try a different approach," Richard decided. "Don't go through the usual agencies. Look for independent educators, people who might be willing to take on a challenge. Post the job online, contact community colleges, reach out to anyone who might be interested in an unconventional teaching opportunity. What should I tell them about the position?" Richard considered this carefully. Tell them the truth. That these are 2 highly intelligent children who have been through a trauma and need someone patient and creative. Mention the generous compensation, but also be honest about the challenges involved. Over the next few days, Richard received dozens of applications from people attracted by the salary he was offering. Most withdrew their applications after learning more details about the situation. A few brave souls agreed to interviews, but none of them seemed like the right fit. There was Dr. Phillips, an elderly professor who spoke about the twins as if they were problems to be solved rather than children to be understood. There was Miss Taylor, a young woman fresh out of college, who seemed enthusiastic but unprepared for the level of sophistication she would be dealing with. Mr. Brooks had impressive credentials but became visibly nervous when Richard described some of the twins more. Creative pranks. As the weeks passed, Richard began to lose hope. The twins continued their destructive behavior, treating the house staff with increasing disrespect and spending their days designing elaborate schemes that served no purpose other than chaos. They had rigged the elevator to play different embarrassing songs for each family member, programmed the smart refrigerator to insult anyone who opened it, and somehow managed to make every television in the house display only nature documentaries about animals. Known for their stubbornness. Richard realized that his children weren't just acting out, they were crying for help in the only way they knew how. Their intelligence had become a weapon they used to keep the adult world at bay, but behind all the pranks and defiance, he could see 2 lost children who missed their mother desperately. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maria brought him an application that had arrived through the community college network. The candidate had unusual qualifications: a master's degree in education, a background in social work, and experience with at-risk youth. What caught Richard's attention wasn't just the impressive resume, but the personal statement that accompanied it. The applicant wrote about understanding the pain that children carry when they lose someone important, about how intelligence can become both a gift and a burden, and about the importance of seeing past behavior to the heart of who a child really is. The letter showed insight and compassion that had been missing from every other application. What surprised Richard most was that he had never considered this type of educator before. All the previous teachers had come from traditional private education backgrounds, focused on academic achievement rather than emotional healing. This applicant seemed to understand that his children needed more than just instruction. They needed someone who could help them process their grief and learn to trust. Again, Richard picked up the phone to arrange an interview, feeling hopeful for the first time in months. Perhaps the answer to his family's problems wouldn't come from the elite educational world he had been searching, but from someone who understood what it meant to overcome ad. Marcus Williams stood at the entrance of the Montgomery mansion, taking in the impressive architecture while mentally preparing himself for what lay ahead. At 34, he had seen enough challenging situations in his career to know that first impressions often told only part of the story. The pristine exterior and manicured gardens spoke of wealth and privilege, but Marcus knew that pain and struggle could exist anywhere. Richard Montgomery opened the door himself, which surprised Marcus. Most wealthy clients he had worked with employed staff to handle such tasks. The man before him looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and the slightly rumpled appearance of someone who hadn't been sleeping well. "Mr. Williams." "Thank you for coming," Richard said, extending his hand. "I have to admit, your application was quite different from the others I received." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "I believe in being direct, Mr. Montgomery. From what you described in your job posting, your children aren't just academically challenging, they're hurting. Traditional educational approaches don't always work with kids who are using their intelligence as a shield." As they walked through the house, Marcus observed everything carefully. The hallways were lined with family photos, but he noticed that most of the recent ones showed only Richard with the twins. There was a clear divide in the timeline before and after some significant event. The house felt more like a museum than a home, beautiful but lacking the warmth that comes from genuine family connection. "I should warn you," Richard said as they climbed the stairs toward the study room. "The twins have prepared something special for today. They always do when they meet a new teacher. I've learned not to take it personally when educators decide this position isn't for them." Marcus smiled. "I've worked with gang members who thought intimidation was their best defense mechanism. I've taught kids who had every reason not to trust adults. Pranks don't scare me, Mr. Montgomery. Pain disguised as mischief is something I understand." The study room door was slightly ajar, and Marcus could hear whispered conversations from inside. Richard knocked politely, which struck Marcus as interesting. Most parents would have simply entered their children's space without ceremony. "Ethan, Emma, I'd like you to meet Mr. Williams," Richard announced as they entered. The twins were positioned strategically around the room. Ethan sat behind what appeared to be a complex contraption made of robotics parts and household items, while Emma had multiple computer screens displaying rapidly scrolling code. They both looked up with expressions that managed to be simultaneously innocent and calculating. Marcus's first impression was how much they resembled each other, not just physically, but in the way they carried themselves. Both had the same guarded posture, the same careful way of watching adults, and the same intelligence burning behind their eyes that seemed almost too intense for children their age. "Hello?" "Ethan, hello, Emma," Marcus said calmly, not moving toward either of them. "I'm Marcus. Your father tells me you've been having some interesting experiences with teachers lately." Emma exchanged a look with her brother. "That's one way to put it," she said. "Are you ready for your test?" "I suppose that depends on what kind of test you have in mind," Marcus replied, settling into a chair near the door but not too close to either twin. "I should mention that I'm pretty good at tests. I've been taking them my whole life." Ethan pressed a button on his contraption, and immediately the lights in the room began flashing in a complex pattern while a loud mechanical noise filled the air. Marcus didn't flinch or cover his ears. Instead, he watched the twins' reactions carefully. "Impressive engineering," Marcus said once the noise stopped. "You've created a sensory overload device. Most people would be disoriented by that combination of light and sound. It's the kind of thing someone might build if they wanted to make sure unwanted visitors left quickly." The twins looked surprised that he wasn't demanding. They turn it off or threatening consequences for their behavior. Emma typed something on her keyboard. and Marcus's phone began buzzing continuously with text message notifications. When he checked it, he found hundreds of messages, all containing random characters and symbols. "You've managed to spam my phone," Marcus observed. "That takes some skill. You must have found a way to access the contact form I used to apply for this position and used an automated system to flood my number. Aren't you going to get angry?" Ethan asked, sounding almost disappointed. "Why would I get angry? You're showing me exactly what I expected to see." Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, making himself comfortable despite the twins' obvious attempts to drive him away. "You're showing me that you're intelligent, creative, and capable of working together when you want to. You're also showing me that you've learned to use these abilities to control your environment and keep adults at a distance." The room fell silent except for the humming of Emma's computers. Both twins were staring at Marcus with expressions that showed they hadn't expected this response. "But here's what I find really interesting," Marcus continued. "You're both sitting as far apart from each other as possible while still being in the same room. You're working together on these pranks, but you're not actually connecting with each other. It's like you're afraid that if you get too close to anyone, even each other, they might leave." Emma's fingers stopped moving across her keyboard. "You don't know anything about us?" "You're right, I don't know much yet. But I know what it feels like to have people expect the worst from you. I know what it's like to be smart enough to see through adult promises and disappointed enough to stop believing them." Ethan had stopped fidgeting with his robot and was looking at Marcus with curiosity rather than suspicion. "How would you know that?" "Because I grew up in a neighborhood where being intelligent was sometimes seen as a threat. I had teachers who thought I was too much trouble to bother with, and others who wanted to fix me without understanding what was actually broken. I learned to use my brain as a weapon too, until someone showed me it could be a tool for building something better." Richard had been standing quietly by the door, but Marcus could see the surprise on his face. None of the previous teachers had engaged with the twins this way. "I have a proposal," Marcus said, addressing both twins. "Instead of trying to scare me away, why don't you show me what you're actually capable of when you're not focused on destruction? I bet you could build some amazing things if you put your minds to it." Emma tilted her head. "Like what? What interests you? What do you actually enjoy doing when no one is watching and expecting you to cause trouble?" The twins looked at each other for the first time since Marcus had entered the room. It was a brief glance, but he caught something passing between them, a shared interest they had been hiding. "We've been working on something," Ethan admitted reluctantly. "But it's not finished." "And it's probably stupid anyway," Emma added quickly. "I doubt that. Would you like to show me?" After another exchange of looks, Emma opened a different program on her computer. The screen displayed a complex 3D model of what appeared to be a prosthetic arm, complete with detailed mechanical components and control systems. "We saw a documentary about kids who lost arms in accidents," Ethan explained, warming to the topic despite himself. "The prosthetics they get are really expensive and don't work very well. We thought maybe we could design something better." Marcus leaned forward, genuinely impressed. "This is incredible. Have you built a working prototype?" "We've made some parts," Emma said, "but we don't have all the materials we need. And we're not sure about the control interface. What if I told you that I know someone who works with assistive technology? Someone who might be able to help you turn this into something real?" For the first time since Marcus had arrived, both twins looked truly interested rather than defensive. "You mean we could actually build it?" Ethan asked. "If you're willing to learn some things you probably don't want to learn, like how to work with other people, how to handle frustration when things don't work the first time, and how to take feedback without getting angry." Emma crossed her arms. "What makes you think we need to learn those things?" "Because the kids who would benefit from your prosthetic arm deserve inventors who can work through problems, instead of giving up when things get hard. And because you both have too much potential to waste it on pranks that don't matter to anyone." Richard watched this exchange with growing amazement. The twins were actually listening to this man, engaging with him in a way they hadn't with any previous teacher. "There's something else," Marcus added. I think you both know that your pranks aren't really about the teachers. They're about something much bigger that happened in your family. And until we deal with that, all the engineering and coding in the world won't make you feel better." The room went very quiet. Emma's hands had stopped moving entirely, and Ethan was staring at the floor. "We don't want to talk about that," Emma said finally. "That's okay. We don't have to talk about anything you're not ready to discuss. But I want you to know that when you are ready, I'll be here to listen." Marcus stood up slowly. "I'm going to talk with your father about scheduling our first real lesson. Tomorrow, if you're willing to try, we'll start working on your prosthetic project. But I have two conditions." "What conditions?" "Ethan." 3 months later, the Montgomery mansion buzzed with the kind of productive energy it hadn't seen since Catherine's death. The sound of focused conversation and occasional laughter drifted from the study room, where Marcus Williams worked with the twins on their latest project. "The servo motor needs to be calibrated differently," Emma explained to her brother, her fingers dancing across multiple screens as she fine-tuned the control software. "If we adjust the response time here, the prosthetic should move more naturally." Ethan nodded, carefully adjusting the mechanical components they had built together. "Try it now." The prosthetic arm they had designed moved smoothly through a series of complex motions, picking up objects of different sizes and weights with impressive precision. What had started as a theoretical design was now a working prototype that could genuinely help someone. "Outstanding work," Marcus said, reviewing their progress notes. "Dr. Sarah Chun from the university is coming tomorrow to see your demonstration. She thinks your design could actually be manufactured and distributed to children who need prosthetics." The transformation in both twins was remarkable. Gone were the defensive postures and constant suspicion that had characterized their interactions with adults. They still possessed the same fierce intelligence, but now it was channeled toward creation rather than destruction. "Mr. Williams," Ethan said, using the formal address they had maintained despite growing comfortable with their teacher, "do you think Mom would have been proud of this?" It was the first time either twin had voluntarily mentioned their mother in Marcus's presence. Over the past months, he had carefully avoided pushing them toward discussions of their grief, instead allowing their healing to happen naturally through their shared work and growing trust. "I think she would have been amazed," Marcus replied honestly. "Not just by what you built, but by how well you worked together to build it." Emma looked up from her computer. "We used to fight all the time before she died. About everything. Stupid stuff." "That's normal for siblings," Marcus said gently. "Fighting doesn't mean you didn't love each other." "After the accident, we stopped fighting because we stopped talking," Ethan admitted. "It was easier to focus on making teachers leave than dealing with how we felt." Marcus had learned that Catherine's death had been sudden and traumatic. The twins had been in the car but survived with minor injuries, while their mother hadn't. The guilt and confusion they carried from that day had manifested as anger toward anyone who tried to enter their lives. "Grief is different for everyone," Marcus explained. "Some people need to talk about their feelings right away. Others need time to process before they can share what they're experiencing. Both approaches are valid." Emma saved her work and turned to face Marcus fully. "The night before Mom died, I had a fight with her about screen time. I told her I hated the rules and wished she would leave me alone. And I was mad because she wouldn't let me take apart the new computer to see how it worked," Ethan added. "We were both being brats." "Do you think those arguments had anything to do with the accident?" Marcus asked carefully. Both twins shook their heads, though Emma's eyes were filling with tears. "We know they didn't," she said. "But it still feels terrible that those were some of our last conversations with her." Marcus moved closer to them, his voice gentle but firm. "Your mother knew you loved her. Parents understand that children get frustrated and say things they don't mean. She also knew how brilliant and caring you both are because she helped shape who you became." "How do you know that?" Ethan asked. "Because of the way your father talks about her, and because of who you are when you're not trying to protect yourselves from being hurt again." The kids who designed this prosthetic arm to help other children are the same kids your mother raised. That doesn't happen by accident. Over the following weeks, Richard noticed continued changes in his children that went beyond their academic progress. They began joining him for dinner regularly instead of eating alone in their rooms. They started asking about Catherine's work and wanting to hear stories about her life before they were born. Most importantly, they began relating to each other as siblings rather than just partners in mischief. The breakthrough moment came during a particularly challenging day when their prosthetic design hit a major technical obstacle. Emma had been working for hours trying to solve a coding problem, while Ethan struggled with a mechanical issue that seemed impossible to fix. "This is stupid," Emma finally exploded, pushing away from her computer. "We're never going to get this right. We should just give up?" It was the first time Marcus had seen either twin express genuine frustration instead of defensive anger. Sometimes the best solutions come after. "We hit the hardest problems," Marcus said calmly. "What would your mother have told you to do when something seemed impossible?" Ethan looked up from his workbench. "She always said that if we couldn't figure something out alone, we should try working together differently. She called it combining our superpowers." Emma wiped her eyes. "She used to say that my coding brain and Ethan's building brain were like two parts of the same invention." "Maybe we should try that," Ethan suggested. "Instead of working on separate parts, what if we solved both problems together?" For the next 2 hours, Marcus watched as the twins truly collaborated for the first time since he had known them. Emma explained her coding challenges while Ethan demonstrated the mechanical issues he was facing. Together, they realized that both problems stemmed from the same source and could be solved with a unified approach. When their solution finally worked, both twins cheered and hugged each other spontaneously. It was a moment of pure joy that had nothing to do with proving their intelligence or impressing adults. They were simply two children who had accomplished something meaningful together. "I wish Mom could see this," Emma said quietly. "Maybe she can," Ethan replied. "Maybe she always could." Richard had been watching from the doorway, and Marcus noticed tears in the man's eyes. Later, in his office, Richard expressed his gratitude in a way that surprised Marcus. "I don't know how to thank you for giving me my children back," Richard said. "Before you came, I felt like I was losing them a little more each day. Now, they're becoming the people Catherine always said they could be." "They were always those people," Marcus replied. "They just needed someone to help them remember how to trust and heal. Your children are remarkable, Mr. Montgomery. They needed time and the right kind of support." "I've been thinking about something," Richard continued. "The twins mentioned that you know other children who might benefit from their prosthetic design. What if we created a foundation? Something that could fund projects like this and provide scholarships for students who want to study assistive technology?" Marcus was intrigued. "You mean a way for Ethan and Emma to help other kids while continuing to learn and grow themselves?" "Exactly. Catherine always wanted to make a difference in children's lives. This could be a way to honor her memory while giving the twins a larger purpose." 6 months later, the Catherine Montgomery Foundation for Young Innovators held its first annual showcase. The event brought together students from around the country who were working on projects designed to help others. Ethan and Emma served as youth ambassadors, sharing their prosthetic design and helping younger children develop their own ideas. Marcus stood at the back of the auditorium, watching his former students present their work to a room full of educators, engineers, and other children. Emma spoke confidently about the coding challenges they had overcome, while Ethan demonstrated the mechanical innovations that made their prosthetic more effective than existing designs. "We learned that the best inventions come from wanting to help people," Emma told the audience. "And the best learning happens when you have someone who believes in you, even when you don't believe in yourself." After the presentation, a young girl approached the twins. She was missing her left arm and had been struggling with an ill-fitting prosthetic that limited her activities. "Could your design really help me play piano again?" she asked hopefully. Ethan knelt down to her level. "We think it could help you play piano better than before. But more importantly, we'd like to work with you to make sure it does exactly what you need it to do. We learned that the best way to solve problems is to listen to the people who actually have them, Emma added. Would you like to be part of our team? The girl's face lit up with excitement, and Marcus felt the familiar warmth that came from seeing children discover their own potential. Later that evening, the Montgomery family gathered for dinner at home, joined by Marcus and his own family. The conversation flowed easily between discussions of the day's presentations, plans for future projects, and the kind of everyday family topics that had been missing from their lives for so long. Mr. Williams, Ethan said during dessert, would you consider staying on as our teacher permanently? We know we're getting older and will need different kinds of education, but we don't want to work with anyone else. We trust you, Emma added simply, and trust is really hard for us. Marcus looked around the table at the faces that had become so important to him. Richard was smiling genuinely for the first time since Marcus had known him. The twins were relaxed and happy, their intelligence now focused on building rather than destroying.